Charles. Tell us all about your life in GDC. And
Well, that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at I'm trying to recap myself on what happened. I mean, there's so many things, and then we put out stuff on the blog. So I'm just sort of looking back through to jog the memory. So GDC went really well. It was, talk about overwhelming. I mean, it was a lot of people, and fortunately this year we had a lot of engineers on the booth, and so people would stop by and ask these just edge case sort of questions, and it was like, you need to talk to Perry, you need to talk to AJ, you need to talk to Vlad. I was able to put them in contact directly with people who could help them, and they were specific questions, right? Like questions about iCloud, or questions about Mac, or questions about and so having the subject matter experts, because each engineer sort of covers an area. It's almost like zones in sports, right? They cover an area, and then they also have their pet things that they like. So right off the bat, oh, you need to talk to this person about that. And so we had a lot of coverage, and that was good. And then I took a lot of photos, as you guys have probably seen on Facebook and Twitter and whatnot. And then the last day, I went around and just shot a bunch of video, took a bunch of pictures of just the show itself, and everything that was going on there. And I got a lot of great clips. Terry Schuessler was there from Fat Red Couch, and he was a fantastic. Ed, you didn't prep me for how great Terry is. I mean, he and I have exchanged emails before in the past, but the guy's phenomenal. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe you haven't experienced his greatness in person yet.
Well, I haven't met him in person. Everything's remote.
Everything's remote, yeah. But you probably, I mean, you've done video calls with him and stuff, haven't you?
Regular video calls with him.
Yeah. So anyway, the interesting footnote is that he worked at Macromedia right around the same time that I worked at Macromedia back in the day. Only I think he worked out in California as a director level position, and I worked in the Dallas office as a peon level position. And so as far apart as we could possibly.
My laughter didn't come through there. I shall forever refer to you as Peon. Sir Peon.
Sir Peon. Just don't. Yeah. Okay. Anyway. So it was good to talk with him because we had a lot of commonalities and experiences and stuff, but they were just in different parts of the company. So it was kind of interesting. But he's done children's books for like 20 years or something, and he's been around for a long time, and he's seen a lot of things. And he was demoing their app, was it here? A New Home for Charlie the Chocolate Chihuahua, which, I have a certain affinity for the name Charlie. So, but he just started going, we were just standing at the booth. He says, here, let me demo this app for you. And I was like, great. Let me just video it. Cause there'll be a nice little clip for the YouTube channel. And he went into all the different pieces of it, how they worked, how they created custom cameras and custom objects and custom classes and custom, all these things that they've done in order to make this thing really interactive. And he gave me like 3 10 to 11 minute clips that are just perfect timing, perfect like a balance between him talking and then back to the app itself. And after I got through talking with him, I said, you really, one, are you going to speak at CoronaCon? And he was like, yeah, I definitely want to. And I said, great, because you really have a knack for this. And he says, oh, well, for a long time, I did professional level training for people on these top level products, like I can't remember exactly, but maybe people who are creative professionals in like Adobe or whatnot. And so he's got a lot of speaking experience on how to pace things and how to draw people's attention to something when you want them to look at it and all of these things. So it was, I've got a couple of clips that I need to publish this week that need to go out, but just great stuff. So I'm really excited. It was one of those things where I was like, this made me really excited for CoronaCon because, the depth of information that somebody like that could provide. And also Steve Bullock from Adveractive, he stopped by and and he creates the apps for David. What's David's name? David. I'm blanking on David's last name, but anyway, he's the man.
You have forgotten a name. This is impossible.
I know it. Isn't it hard to believe? But he's the man that puzzles America. I can remember that part. That's the marketing part. And he's always on television. And he's always promoting. And if you go out and look at any of these puzzles in newspapers and stuff, you're probably looking at David's work. And so anyway, he's partnered with Steve Bullock.
David Hoyt.
Hoyt, thank you.
Yeah. How could you forget Hoyt?
Hoyt.
It's like almost a household name. Somebody,
right. Right. Yeah. So his stuff is it's one of those things you might not know it if you don't pay attention to those types of things, but he's all over the place. So
wait, Hoyt was on the show, right? You said that just now.
Yeah, he was on the show.
I talked to him like about a year and a half ago. 2
Right.
years.
Right. Yeah. And so he's traditionally been print media kind of stuff, but he's partnered or whatever with Steve and they're doing apps. So I think let's see this one here, like word jumble, and then there's another one, just 2 words, which is down there someplace. And then there's another one that's back here. That's something word stampede. Out there, that green one, and so anyway, it was great to talk to Steve as well. And he didn't want to necessarily come and be a speaker at CoronaCon, but he definitely wants to come and if he can attend, if his schedule allows it, and be on a panel, which I thought would be fantastic because it's one thing to kind of get hey, here's a topic, and I'm going to walk you through from A, B, and C, and then at the end I'll take questions. But if you can get somebody on a panel like that who has a deep well of knowledge, you can just mine gold all day long. And even at the time, the amount of time that I spent talking with Steve was just amazing. Steve is actually the one, now that Sergey's here, Steve is using Sergey's text-to-speech plugin in the Word Stampede app. And it was a great, I have a clip of that I need to publish as well, but it was a great example of what that thing could do. Because I had in my mind, I kind of had this, text to speech kind of thing going on, but it was very smooth, and you could adjust all the variables, pitch and speed and everything, and it was just a great example. And then he had lots of comments about designing word games and things like that. So, and then Michael Wilson, he stopped by the booth from Pony Wolf. And we've had Michael on the show before, several times. One for a project that he was working on, I think, and then another one he had like a Kickstarter campaign or something he was doing, and he was also wasn't the primary developer on NBA Escape, but he did some work on it. And anyway, it was great to talk with him because he does a lot of work with Tile Engine kind of stuff, and he's got a lot of great thoughts on that. So it was even fun to sort of put him in contact with the engineers and say, okay, here's a guy that is very opinionated, has experience with tiling, and you want to talk directly to the engineers and see how we could work that kind of stuff in, what lessons we can learn from it. So that was great. And then we had Tyler Coleman, who is a developer here in Austin. He and his business partner were there, and they had some great things to say about the forums, how we could improve the forums and maybe encourage, like upvoting of answers, so that some of the, one of the comments they had was actually that, today when somebody goes in and says, hey, I'm having a problem with XYZ, and then a few people chime in and say, yeah, me too. And then somewhere in there, Rob will come in and say something, and then somebody will also say, me too. And then, so your answer to you have to really kind of like fish through
you have to dig a lot to get the actual answer out of it.
Yeah, you have to dig a lot to get to the answer. And they were saying they would like to see a Stack Overflow type system where the things could be voted on and then bubbled up to the top, right? And then that way you
Best
could get
answers are bubbled up.
yeah, you could get right to the answer, which I thought was great feedback. And so we're going to try to figure some of that out. We're pretty heavily invested just in terms of knowledge in the forum system that we have, but there's definitely room. We're exploring like the idea of having a knowledge base for things that are known issues, but not necessarily part of documentation, but don't need to necessarily just be buried in the forums. Things that we can, not an FAQ, but just something that you can kind of go and look through and say, oh yeah, here it is. Because some of this stuff comes in as user voice items. Hey, we'd like to have, some really off the cuff, and you're like, well, we're probably not going to do that. And so if you the crazy thing about user voice is if you say no to a request and close it, then it goes away, and then somebody comes in and then puts it back in as a request in user voice, right? So if they had a place where they could go and look that thing up and say, oh, it's not just no, it's this really doesn't fit, or this isn't cross-platform, or whatever the reason is, right? And then you'd have more context around it. So GDC was great. I mean, it was really good to have all that going on. Have all the Kurt. I'm probably saying his last name wrong. Being. I don't know. BIEG. He was there from Simple Machine, and I know. Oh, so here's the thing. I'm going to put a bug in everybody's ear, and you guys got to like put this in user voice and vote it up. One of the things that Kurt's doing in his apps, so I don't know if you guys remember Pop the Lock. Pop the Lock was this app where
how could we forget Pop the Lock?
Yeah, you got well, just for the people who
charts for like forever.
Right, it was top of the charts forever, and it's very simple. It's like you got a circle. There's a line there that moves around, and you have to time it to where you tap at the right time, and you kind of line up the tick marks, and then you unlock the lock, right? Well, that's kind of a session-based, either get it or you don't sort of thing. What Kurt's doing is he's beginning to come up with characters, and you unlock these characters, and then which I think is a great idea for game development. Like,
are you giving away his secret sauce?
Well, no, he was showing it off at GDC, so
given away.
But the developer of Eggs, that where he won the big indie pitch in London, he's doing the same thing where you customize your character. All your XP points that you earn in the game, you can apply to customizing the character, which sort of more emotionally involves you in the character. Or the game. You've spent more time in it. You have a reason to come back to it. All these things. Okay, so keep that in mind. But the next thing I want to say is that Amazon was there with their Amazon merch offering. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but they basically are doing print on demand T-shirts. So if you've ever done any research on like what's the Cafe Press? You go to Cafe Press or any of these other print on demand, or not print on demand, but store based T-shirt shops. Usually you have to raise your prices so high in order to have any sort of profit, because like Cafe Press, they'll start the shirt out at like $9 or something, right? And now you're like, well, now I got to raise the price of the shirt just so I can make my money. And Amazon merch is kind of like, we're going to do print on demand, and all they're asking is they're going to recover the cost of production, and then the developer can set their price from there. So imagine for a moment, okay, so here's the part that I was really excited about. So they also have an SDK. Imagine for a moment that there was a plugin, which doesn't exist yet and hasn't been put on the books as something that we're going to do, but I'm trying to push this idea internally, that imagine that your player is playing your game, they've customized their character, they've hit some kind of high score, or they've smack down some other player in multiplayer, and they're just proud about it, right? And they're like, yeah. And at that moment, they're presented with a button that says buy a T-shirt, and it's like, here's a snapshot with your customized character, and it's like hero pose, and the high score is there, and you're like, get this T-shirt, right? And then the player buys it, and then it's just printed on demand by Amazon and then shipped directly to their house. So you don't have to handle the fulfillment. You don't have to handle anything. All you're doing is building into your app the opportunity for them to participate financially in this thing that they have personally invested time and energy customizing. So I don't know. So I told this to Kurt, and he was like, yeah, he could see it. And he's even got some games that he was like, I got a perfect fit. And there were games and things like that. So I was pretty excited about that kind of stuff. So I'm going to try.
What's Amazon's angle on? You're saying they're not really marking anything up. What's their angle and their reason to, in the whole thing?
How are they going to make any money out of that?
Yeah, well, I'm sure. Yeah, I don't know what their production costs are. So it's kind of like a not for profit organization. That doesn't mean they don't make any money. That just means they're keeping it as low as it's keeping it attractive to developers.
It kind of feels like the same thing with Underground. How they're not, they're paying you basically. They're giving away the game for free. They're paying you while other people play it, but they're doing it, I think, so that they can grow their base and have all these people coming to their site. Same thing for the merch, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think they're doing that to get Google Play people.
And they've got their new game engine, which I can't remember what the name of it is right now, but I'll look it up. Lumberjack, right. So I think they're really working on trying to become like the place to go to, one location for all this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was pretty apparent. They had that all in one area, and they had a Twitch offering as well. So they're just trying to dominate it all, right? So, but they're
an online store to dominate them all.
Yeah, but it's just like everything else. I mean, there's always a catch, right? There's always not that they're hiding anything. I mean, just like. When you look at the support offering for that tool, there are some gaps, right? So it's like Corona. We always like iOS, Android, Google, like Kindle, Windows. I mean, we're trying to hit all the popular platforms that are in the mobile, desktop, and TV space, and Amazon is trying to hit that. They're trying to enter that tool market, but they're actually trying to go for top end, teams, big developers. So anyway, I think the Amazon merch thing was really interesting. I mean, especially from a developer standpoint, especially if you can sort of play with. You don't have to buy a whole inventory full of T-shirts. You're not stuck to one design. You can say, hey, I see that I can kind of push this digital concept to people and see what they buy most. Do they buy the whole high score most? Do they buy a customized character most? Do they buy, any of it at all? And you can kind of refine your offering. So that was that GDC. And one of the things I saw at GDC was kind of VR. VR was all over the place. I mean, it was just, you couldn't throw a rock without hitting somebody in the head with a VR thing on. I mean, it was all over the place. They even had immersive, there was one that was a dome that it wasn't necessarily VR like you had a headset on, but the whole inside of the dome had projectors and you were just surrounded by visual stimulus. So I when people came by the booth, wanting to make sure that we were cutting edge, I showed them Disco Cat for AR, right? So that they could, remember Laura Talarde's app, the one where we were,
How could I forget my moment of shame? The Disco Cat Ed.
I was like, look, here's AR. We can do AR.
You're slave, buddy.
Tongue in cheek, of course, but hey, I think
we're there, buddy. We got it. It's all covered.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna go, where's the AR plug-in?
That's right. We are looking in the rearview mirror already, guys. What's next?
AR was yesteryear for us.
That's old school.
We're getting embedded in the back of your head now.
Yeah. It was fun though to see to see so many people trying to nail it. I mean, even Oculus was there, and down to just the indie with a PC and like the headset, right? So it was.
This is round 2.0 for VR. I mean, a couple years ago, VR was really like everybody got excited, and then they went, that's not going to work.
Well, we actually
now we can do it. This time it will happen.
Right. We had one vendor who stopped by the booth and they were like, we've been doing VR for 20 years. I was like, well, good point. Because VR is not a new conversation. But I don't know. I did see some interesting things with, I think augmented reality has a lot more potential. I saw one, have a video clip of this one application where it was a tablet and then that was mounted on a Nerf gun and then you were shooting things out of the air. So you were still seeing the conference as you moved around, but things were, objects like were in the sky and then you were shooting them out. So you would move the Nerf gun around and shoot these things out. So, just some fun, interesting things. I'm not sure. Like the dome wasn't practical. You're not going to have a dome in your living room, that kind of thing. So,
sorry, strange noise in the background. I had to investigate.
You haven't watched very many horror movies. That's what happens. You leave, and then next thing you know, yeah.
That's right. But never mind. I'm not going to go there.
So what do you guys been up to while we were at GDC? What's going on, Ed? You got tools you've been working on?
Yep, tools.
Mike, you got
that tool.
You got apps.
I need an official name. You know what? There should be a contest.
Well,
official name for this.
It does need an official name. We need a way to identify it.
Yeah.
Calling it Ed's tool just sounds weird.
Teresa, my wife, she said we should call it EAT. Ed's awesome tool.
Ed's awesome tool.
EAT for short.
Not a bad idea.
Everybody needs to eat. See?
Yeah.
Thinking about going with that. Eat.
So best way to eat Corona.
Sir?
It's the best way to eat Corona.
There we go. It's the best way to eat Corona.
Everybody can say, eat it.
Yeah. Eat it. See? Wow, she's spot on. I can tell this is going to be the new name.
Nice.
What was that? Okay, I'm half serious here, though. I mean, what was that tool? Everybody knows it, and now I can't remember the title, but it's Half-Life?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the tool that they use to mod Half-Life. It's somebody's tool or something like that, and it's like, it's the de facto tool now for making modding.
Gary's Mod.
Gary's Mod, exactly. Gary's Mod.
Is that where Gary's Mod came from? Half-Life?
It started with Half-Life.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't
know if it's started or it's continued to be, but like everything Half-Life and Half-Life related. Because all those games have their core at the Half-Life engine or the Half-Life base or whatever you want to call it. So the source engine, that's what I'm thinking of.